little trouble finding the chat feature.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing here, Sean. I do not find it, at least the way the screen is presenting.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it, and I'm on a PC. I've got the whole thing, but so I'm not sure how you guys want to handle that.
Okay. Well, we'll just ask people to be respectful and you know, let's get through the presentations, particularly as far as Linda and Millie are concerned. And also you, Eric, doing the checklist / recap of 203. So when we get to number 5, we're going to start having problems, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not see the chat function unless there's something else the way we've enabled it. Nope.
You do have the ability, if you go to participants, you have the ability to raise your hand.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's something we want to try to do, and then we can call on folks.
Well, I see Linda raised her hand already. And so did Pastor Marty.
I did.
Say that again, Linda.
If I could see it on my screen, but I don't. I didn't mean to raise my hand. I will lower it.
That's okay. I'm sure Jerry Adair forced you to do that.
I just like to play with all the buttons. The Zoom, you got to find something in the Zoom. Like,
Oh, this is going to be a longer meeting than I thought it was going to be.
Well, Frank's talking to somebody, but he's muted.
All right. Well, just
He's
so
probably
everybody
asking
knows,
questions.
we're currently recording and we are live on Facebook.
Okay. All right.
Do you want the agenda up, Jay?
Yeah, why don't you, Sean? Please.
This meeting is being recorded.
There we go. Whenever you folks are ready. Sean, Rachel?
I'm good.
Chief, can I interrupt for a second?
Yep. Go ahead.
As the co-host, I don't believe I am able to actually live stream to Facebook, so I think that's something you'll need to initiate.
Okay, stand by. 1 second.
Gee, I didn't think they made those refrigerators anymore.
Oh, well, you would be amazed what you can buy and what someone is willing to pay to help us get that for our 40th anniversary. It's actually a Whirlpool refrigerator underneath. It ain't really vintage.
Oh, okay.
But the quote unquote accompanying stove is twice what the refrigerator costs. So needless to say, we do not have that feature. But I actually remember that kind of refrigerator. That's how freaking old I am.
I wasn't going to point that out.
Well, at that time, they also delivered milk in bottles still to the back door through a little box that was inside the house.
and really old, Jay.
I know, Marty. What can I tell you? We ready there, Mr. Facebook coordinator, Sean?
Oh, I just got to get that name on there and we're good to go.
Okay.
Sean, what are you, what's it coming on over what vehicle, what page on Facebook?
City of Batavia Police Department's page.
Okay, thank you.
We're also going to record it and put it on our YouTube channel tomorrow. And we're live.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to get started here with our November 19th, 6 p.m. meeting as far as our looking at the police services in the city of Batavia and all the stakeholders who are part of this Zoom meeting this evening. We don't know that we have the chat function right now, but we do have, if you go to the participants list, the ability to raise your hand at some point. Understand that it might be a little funky in that regard, a little clunky, all things considered. The meeting is being recorded. It's also now live on the City of Batavia Police Department's Facebook page. And there will be up on YouTube tomorrow, the actual recording of what we are talking about and engaging in this evening. If you could all at the present time mute yourselves so that we can get through the initial presentation, starting with Eric going through both Executive Order 203 and then the checklist that comes therein, as well as then Linda Batavia, our Genesee County Mental Health Director, and also then Millie Tomedy, as far as Tomedy Pepper, excuse me, the YWCA presentation. So Eric, take it away.
Thanks, Jay. Sean, do you have the ability to put that checklist up?
Yep, stand by.
So just to go through the response plan and the governor's executive order on police reform, just to see where we stand going into today's meeting. The 14 items on the checklist, George provided us with more of a actual checklist. So we've already gone through use of force, policy 300, procedural justice, which included policy 319, 339, and 401. Rachel shared with us a study addressing systemic racial bias in policing. We heard people talk about implicit bias awareness training and what's going on with that. Did that happen yet, Sean? Was that like next week or December?
So we had
Is it on
to
the schedule?
postpone that, and we're looking at doing a virtual training now due to the increase.
Due to COVID. Okay. We talked about de-escalation training, law enforcement assisted diversion programs, things such as PARI, those types of things. Genesee Justice talked about restorative justice practices. Tonight, we're going to hear from folks from the YWCA and mental health in regards to the community-based outreach, conflict resolution, and violence prevention and reduction. Last meeting, we talked about problem-oriented policing, the crime task force, hotspot policing with the net officer program, as well as focused deterrence, and crime prevention through environmental design, which Rachel shared with us the 500-page report that she had on that. And we talked a little bit about that. So tonight we're going to get through, as I mentioned, those first two things, as well as model policies by NYMPTC in regards to what was basically given down from them as far as training council goes. Sean's going to handle that. Talk a little bit about New York State accreditation, and then we're going to spend some time at the end of the day reviewing all these to see if anybody needs more information, because we're basically wrapping up that portion of the task force. So any questions on that? I wouldn't know if you had any anyways. So let's move on. I believe Linda Batavia is up.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? I hope so. That seems to be the first question everybody asks when they get onto a Zoom call. So thank you for letting me present. My presentation is just an overview of Genesee County mental health and what we do in the community and how we work with all the police departments in Genesee County to ask. And I'm going to just kind of direct that to the next slide. Perfect. Who am I? I'm the Director of Mental Health and Community Services. And just for a brief overview, my specific title falls under Article 41 of the Mental Hygiene Law. Every county in New York State has to have, by Article 41 law, either a Director of Community Services, also known as a Commissioner of Mental Health, or Commissioner for the county. I'm responsible for the oversight of mental hygiene services that fall in the community, and those mental hygiene services consist of the Office of Mental Health, the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, and the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. So I have a dual role in running the clinic and also the planning and coordination of community services. So what does Genesee County Mental Health do? We are an outpatient licensed clinic. We are licensed by the New York State Office of Mental Health, and our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. We provide outpatient mental health services to children and adults and families. Our team is a multidisciplinary team. We have 65 staff total, consisting of licensed clinical social workers as well as licensed mental health staff. We have registered nurses. We have psychiatric nurse practitioners, as well as an on-site psychiatrist. In addition to providing the outpatient county-run clinic, and we are part of the local government unit, so we have to have a SPOA. SPOA is single point of access, and I want to just review that really quickly because it's a really important service that's been in all the counties in New York State for well over a decade. Single point of access or single point of entry allows for all the service providers in the community or the county to get together and wrap services around either an adult or a child who needs various services. So we might get a referral from a hospital, and all those providers will come to the table and talk about how we can best wrap services around that person. And the person, the client, the adult, the child, or the family are involved in that process as well. So they're there to meet with all the providers. They're there to talk about what kind of services they want, what kind of services they think they will benefit from. And so it's a really great service. We have licensed satellite offices in several of the schools in Genesee County. We're at Byron Virgin, Robert Morris, Oakfield, Alabama, and hopefully Leroy soon. And our goal is really to be in all the schools because mental health services is a significant need in the schools. We also have a licensed provider. And when I say satellite office, that means that one of my clinic staff actually go to those designated sites that are also licensed by the Office of Mental Health to provide that service to the individual at that site instead of them having to come to the Genesee County Mental Health Clinic. So it's like an additional or an arm extension office from the clinic itself. And we're hoping to have a staff person at the local jail very soon, pandemic, all things considered, so that we can provide services to various entities in the county. We have the capability for telehealth and telephonic services. Currently right now with the pandemic, emergency regulations have been lifted and extended, allowing us to provide mental health treatment services over the phone. So clients can receive that session over the phone or through telehealth, which is similar to Zoom. It really just depends on what kind of equipment or technical availability they have. We have found that the telehealth and telephonic services have been widely accepted by community providers, by clients and community members. And it allows for another delivery of another method of delivery for services for individuals instead of only being kind of pigeonholed into that face-to-face. And during the pandemic has proven to be extremely significant way of delivering services. A walk-in, so that allows for a client or a community person or anybody that has is in crisis that can walk in during our hours of operation to walk in and see somebody if they need help. They're going to be met by an intake clerk or financial clerk first to get some just very basic demographic information, and then they're going to be able to talk with a therapist, and that can also be done either face-to-face or over the phone or through telehealth. So open access has been open the entire time. It's been widely used. Next slide. Are we frozen? Oh, there we go. This is our crisis plan. We contract with Niagara County Care and Crisis to be our 24/7 hotline. So there's a number on the screen. We also have the Rochester Psychiatric Center MIT team, or the mobile integration team, and they provide mobile crisis response during our business hours. So Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. So if somebody was in crisis in the community, the MIT team would go and respond to assess the situation and see what they can do to assist the individual. And then our after hours program is with Spectrum Cares out of Buffalo. They provide our after hours services. So from 5 p.m. till 8:30 the following morning, weekends and holidays as well. The number is there for you also. So anybody can call that number to ask for mobile hotline response. So when would the police respond to somebody that was in a mental health crisis or in crisis overall? If somebody was presenting as a potential threat to themselves or to somebody else, and I'm going to talk a little, just very briefly, about the mental hygiene law that's associated with that. If they're presenting with any kind of aggression or violent behaviors, or they're verbally aggressive, if they have a history of violence, police are out in the community all the time. They go to the same, addresses. Sometimes they get to know people in the community. So if police know that an individual has a history of aggression or violence, they're automatically going to respond to that area. And they're always available to assist the mobile teams. I worked in the outreach department at Crisis Services in Buffalo many, many years ago, and we utilized police services pretty frequently because it allowed me to do my job with the safety of police when it was needed. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to help the person in crisis. And as I mentioned, police can and have used Mental Hygiene Law 9.41. That's really a mental hygiene law that's only utilized when an individual is imminently in danger in front of the police. So if police deem that this person is at imminent risk of hurting themselves or somebody else in front of them, and they have the authority to transport that person involuntarily to the nearest psychiatric emergency room for evaluation. So police have used that, but it's not always their go-to, because they oftentimes de-escalate the situation and they reach out to the mobile crisis teams, which is what we want. We want to help the person. We want to keep them maintained in living a productive life in the community. So police have called our mobile response teams for assistance. If they don't meet that criteria, let's say, and the person is in crisis, they might call one of the mobile teams during hours or during after hours to assist them. Those mobile teams are designees of mine in the county, and they fall under the Mental Hygiene Law 9.45, which allows them to evaluate an individual to see if they're also at risk of any kind of potential harm. And again, the majority of responses result in keeping the person in the community and wrapping services around them. That is the least restrictive environment for that individual, and that's ultimately what we want to do. And police have also brought individuals or referred individuals to Genesee County Mental Health for treatment. They have called us and said, we have somebody, can we bring them in to see you? And we've made arrangements to make that happen through our open access system. That's worked out really well. And so mental health and police moving forward, in talking with the departments, including the chief, we're going to be providing a mental health training to the department that's going to contain an overview of mental health, a review or an overview of symptoms or issues that people may be experiencing when they are in crisis, and how to talk to an individual that may be experiencing mental health symptoms. Because again, it's not that they want to criminalize the situation. They really want to help the individual and provide them with the right kind of service. We'll talk about some of the complications of response to systems. And again, this is just a very generic overview of what we would potentially cover. And then possibly some simulation for the officers to see what it might be like for somebody who is experiencing, for example, like a psychotic episode, what that might feel like or sound like. We're going to review current policies and practices relating to mental health and have continuous conversations with all parties involved. And we've already started this process. The chief and I started this process when I first came on board just about a year ago, about how the department and mental health can do even more together, because the relationship was already there, the collaboration was already there. But what else can we do with it? We want to do more. And we're going to continue to work collaboratively with making safety and access to appropriate services a top priority. So mental health is definitely at the forefront of some of these discussions. And I wanted to just provide an overview of all the services that we provide. Again, that was a very quick version of what
Linda, it seems like you cut out on us, or did you just mute yourself?
I just did myself. I asked if anybody had any questions.
It's like she's cutting in and out. That's what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions of Linda? Points of clarification. Okay. I see none. So let's turn it over to Millie Tomedy Pepper. Thank you, Eric. Okay, Millie, we got your screen up there. Okay.
Millie, you're on mute still.
Yeah. She says she's not. It says it's not. Huh. Nope, now she's on mute again.
Do we have a way of whoever's running the show to?
Yeah,
unmute her?
Sean or Eric, can you guys unmute Millie?
She should be unmuted now.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it looks like it, Millie.
computer problems.
Okay.
She's
How
not-
about your speaker volume, Millie?
I don't even see the mute button on her.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that. You're right, right?
It's not even showing.
Eric, is there a way she could call in?
Yeah, we can give that a shot.
Yeah, there is a phone number.
Yeah,
The
it was on the invite.
Might be an issue with the microphone.
and give it to her over this here. Hang on. We knew there'd be a couple bumps.
Oh, it's that difference between Sprint versus Verizon in the two communities.
Ready for a phone number, Millie? Okay. 1-929-205-6099.
And Chief, when she gets in, if you could just add her to the group.
Yep.
I can't because I'm sharing my screen right now.
Yep, I can do that.
Hey, just a thought, maybe if she just checked out and came back in, it may be the trick.
Okay, Millie, do you want to try to leave the meeting and come back?
Marty, is that your version of unplugging it and plugging it back in?
It's the best I got.
He's actually giving it a blessing also, I've noticed. Okay, there's her phone, I'm presuming. Okay. Okay, I
Can you
think
hear
I'm
me?
hearing. Yep, we can, Millie. Go ahead.
Sorry, holy.
That's okay. Go right ahead. Your screen is up.
Okay, so sorry for all the confusion there. I don't know what was happening.
There
So
you go.
I
Make
am
sure you,
the,
yeah. Just, Millie, just make sure you use your speakers on your phone as high as you can.
think
Is
we
she
lost her.
talking? Because I can't hear her.
She
Yeah.
was, and then she disappeared. Although her number also disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Don't see her back yet.
Millie, I think Pastor Marty's suggestion might be the best. If you want to try to log out and log back in, that might correct the problem.
Jay or Eric, do you want to move on to the next part of the presentation? Then we can come back if we get this rectified.
Sure, go ahead, Chief. You're it.
Okay. So currently I'm sharing, everybody should be able to see community engagement survey. And I'm not going to take a whole lot of credit for this because I kind of stole it from another agency. However, we thought that it was, it hit all the points that we were looking at in this particular executive order. So we thought that it may be a good idea if we could put a survey like this out to the community. And I'll just go through the questions real quick. The first question is, do you live in the city of Batavia? We find that extremely important for the respondents to have lived here. If they don't live here, obviously they have an opinion about the city and its officers and the police department, but we certainly want to focus in on city residents. Second question is, has the current climate surrounding law enforcement affected your opinion of the city of Batavia Police Department? Simply yes or no there. So with everything that's going on across our nation, across this country, has that had any effect, positive or negative, on your opinion of the Batavia Police Department? And if you answered yes to question 2, has it improved, remained the same, or gotten worse? The next question asked about the last interaction a person has had with the City of Batavia Police Department. Was it a 911 call but never met with an officer? Was it on a traffic stop? Was it at a community event? Or was the person, was it an arrest situation or other? And then the follow-up question to that is, what is your experience with that interaction based upon the professionalism of the officer or officers that were involved? And then there's a series of questions gauging agreement with them. Presence of, first one being the presence of City of Batavia police officers in my neighborhood make me feel safer. Asking for their opinion on that. If I encounter a City of Batavia police officer, am I confident I'll be treated fairly and with respect? And then if I see a City of Batavia police officer, I get nervous that I might be unfairly targeted due to my race or gender identity. The seventh question is really asking the public to prioritize what they believe the department should be doing with respect to these 6 different sections here. So they can only have one top priority, right, in life. So this is what we're asking. What do you think that we should be focused on right now? Do more to address vehicle and pedestrian safety, so traffic enforcement. Assign more resources toward neighborhood issues. Assign more resources to assist those with substance abuse issues. Assign more resources to assist youth in the community. Engage more with the community, or provide more training resources for officers in the area of bias-based policing. The next question has to deal with mental health calls. Recent public discussion have involved assigning non-law enforcement professionals to certain types of calls, specifically mental health calls. What's your opinion on that? Should non-law enforcement professionals be sent to all calls alone and only request police if needed? Should police officers respond to the scene first and then request the non-law enforcement professionals once the scene is safe? Or should both the police officers and the non-law enforcement professionals respond together at the same time? Or do you have another opinion? And that kind of goes back to the presentation that Linda gave regarding the MIT team. Those would be the non-law enforcement professionals, so mental health professionals, and their response. And then when thinking about that question, should the police officers still respond? I think that's obviously a hot button topic in our country. Should police officers be responsive to mental health calls? I did explain early on in our meetings the reason that they are dispatched to mental health calls at this point in time is to make sure that the scene is safe and that people are safe. And then here's another one to gauge their opinion on these 3 questions. Do you feel the City of Batavia Police Department is as transparent in sharing information with the public as compared to other law enforcement agencies you're familiar with? So where do we rank in there? Do you desire to see more police officers present in your neighborhood? And do you feel the City of Batavia Police Department is responsive to the public's needs? The next is a series of demographic collection, which is completely optional. These don't have to be filled out, but it does give us an idea of obviously the responses. And then lastly, are there any other focus areas not included in this survey? So again, I feel that it was a very well done survey by another police organization in our region that really hit on a lot of the topics from the executive order to try to drill down on those. I wanted to present that tonight to the group here to see what the thought would be as to releasing this to the public in anticipation of returning these responses as part of the plan.
Okay, folks, time to put up as far as any comments you have. Unmute yourself and throw them at Sean and company.
Sean, Marty, McDonald, the only, and I can't remember what number it was, but I wrote down interaction. There's really nothing on there that designates a positive interaction. So 911 incident, traffic stop, community, well, I guess community event, arrest, other. I'm just thinking to communicate a healthy narrative and to let every opinion, including mostly the positive ones, be heard. I don't know if that's what your goal is in this, but when I think of interaction, I think of you guys helping hand out food. I think of you doing the national night out, those interactions. So when I think of that, and it's been a while since I got a traffic stop more. Hopefully it'll be a long time before that does happen again. But I'm just thinking about, I'd like to interject just my thought.
Yeah.
It would be great if there was a spot there for something positive as well. And I mean that with all sincerity. When I think about the interaction, that's all I think of.
Right. Do you think it would be appropriate to add another bullet then for, I guess, some other specific type of interaction? And I guess I can't, I'm drawing a blank on what that is, because a lot of what you talked about would be included in community events, I think.
Yeah, but Sean, don't you guys also do things like well-person checks in terms of someone calls the center and says, by the way, could you at least just check on somebody for us? That kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually a really good example. Well,
you don't have to add collecting guns in my driveway on the list, though. We're good for that.
Yeah, I'll put that one on. You can put that in the
Sean, this is Linda. I was going to suggest that, I would be really curious to know if you added in question number 4, any kind of, crisis, crisis call or something, just to get an idea of how many calls the police department is receiving and responding to regarding mental health calls, because I think it'll tie into some of the other questions you asked about mental health professionals being on site. It'll kind of tie everything together. It's just my thought.
Okay. Yeah, those are good.
Overall, I think it's a really, really nice survey. I'll be interested to see what the results are.
Chief, this is Annabelle here, Superintendent. Just a quick question. In terms of accessibility, is this only going to be available for the community via online survey? Typically, when I give out surveys here in the school district, that limits the response rate, and oftentimes, probably, I'm going to guess the target audience you want to hear back from this may not necessarily have internet. And so just something to think about, a paper copy version, the one that you mail out to every address. I know there's some cost in that, but you mail it out to the homes with a self-addressed stamp to come back to you. Just something to think about. I don't know if that's something you've thought about, or maybe partnering with us and us getting it to the kids under 18 so you can get maybe some feedback there. We can disseminate it electronically, but I'm also thinking you're probably going to want to hear from communities that don't necessarily engage online.
Yeah, you actually read my mind, partnering with you to get this, to get it out. We'd definitely be willing and love to do that.
Sean, have you guys used like the penny saver with an insert kind of methodology in the past, or is that really not real effective?
I think the way they were done in the past, and Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, is they were sent out in the city water bills.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so Sean's correct, and we only bill a portion of the city at a time. So it would take us a good several months to get all the results back. But Superintendent Solar, I mean, whatever, we can print them, we can get them to you if we can think of a way to get them out there. And I think that's an excellent point to bring up, that we can't let this be online only. We have to have paper formats, and we have to get them out there. So a mailing I think that we just did to the 5th and 6th ward about the FEMA flood area was a bit costly, but let's look into it. Let's figure that out, and let's figure out how we can get the most participation possible.
And Rach, you could go like to Notre Dame and to St. Paul's Lutheran Church and things of that nature also, and hand them the same thing that, that Annabelle and his people might be able to distribute. So we have, at least at the education level, a lot more people.
And certainly available at the library and other places where, well, we're not supposed to be gathering, but people may tend to go into. So.
Yeah, and Chief, we could put this on our social media. Send it out to families as well.
Perfect. I think that's a great idea. If we could actually get, you know, any of the participants here to share it on their social media, that would be great.
Sean, we could help. You know, if you designated a section of the city, we could actually have people just take them door to door if there was a vehicle to get them back to you. But we could help with the delivery of those.
That'd be great. Okay. Yeah, we can explore that avenue too.
Chief, can I ask a question about, and I'm sorry, if this topic isn't done on distribution, we certainly can continue to explore that.
I don't
Go ahead, Rach.
Okay. One thought, and you went through the questions a little fast. Does it ask what was your last experience, whether it was positive or negative, and to describe it?
It asks about your last interaction, correct? So question 4 and question 5.
Yep.
So does it say whether it was, okay, during your last interaction with the city PD, how would you rate your experience? So yeah, positive or negative, and then what was it? Yeah. Okay.
Anything else for this on this particular question, this particular section, number 5?
Chief, I just think to Pastor Marty's comment, I think if you write just the word positive and then put please specify and then give them an opportunity to type in, I think that may help kind of broaden it as opposed, and you can still keep other as well, but there's a way to just say, you know, what was the nature of your last interaction? The choice would be positive, and in parentheses, please specify. So it was like, you know, wellness check, whatever you want to put in there. I think that may give you some flexibility. Worst case scenario, you at least know it was positive. You may not know the specific of it, but at least you know it was positive.
Right. No, that's a good idea.
Okay. Anybody else on this one? Looks like we got Millie back. So Millie, are you ready to video us or telephone us?
I think she was the one with all the feedback, so I did mute her.
Okay, so want to unmute her, unmute her.
I cannot
try on the video.
To do that.
She might have had her phone and her computer going.
I am on. Can you hear me?
There you
We
go.
can.
Hey.
We can hear you.
Yay. Okay.
And there's your presentation, Millie.
Okay. And how do I go from slide to slide?
I think Eric will take care of that for you.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm Millie Tomedy Pepper, Executive Director of the YWCA in Genesee County. And next slide, please. Our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. This year, we're celebrating 110 years. The domestic violence staff is made up of a team of 4. We have Justina Gardner, who's our domestic violence program director, Rena McCumsky, case manager, Eva Graham, case manager, and Christina Dady, who is our counselor. Our services include crisis counseling when a survivor comes in, can come in right from a situation, and our counselors are there to meet them and process what's going on and help them with anything that they need, including safe shelter. We offer individual and family mental health counseling. We do civil court orders of protection through family court and family offense petitions, assistance with custody, support, violations, and any other family court work. And the most important thing, of course, is our 24-hour domestic violence hotline. We also have a small grant through Legal Aid out of Rochester, and this is to help our clients who are in need of an attorney. This says for divorce proceedings, but it's also for other needs as far as legal assistance. We accompany our clients to court and provide advocacy and support to them in the Integrated Domestic Violence Court, which is also called IDV Court. When any survivor comes to us, we always do safety planning. We also offer a parenting after violence class. This is a class that is geared towards parents who are separated, where there has been domestic violence in the family, but they still have children that they need to parent somehow together. And so this parenting class addresses how parents can talk to their children about what happened in the household, and also take back how to parent. I'm sorry, I'm having feedback on my end, so I'm sorry if I'm hesitating a little bit in between each bullet point. We also offer prevention education and emergency housing. Referrals to our case managers or our counselor come from different places. Some come from law enforcement. If an officer is on the scene of a domestic violence incident, they might call the case manager directly, or depending on the circumstances, they may make a referral to the YWCA and help. And our case managers will help with a family offense petition. Other referrals come from family court, child protective services, mental health, treatment court, Department of Social Services.
You got muted, Millie, somehow.
You muted her. She's muted.
Yeah,
Can you
don't
hear
know
me?
how. There you go.
Can you hear me?
You're back.
Okay. Boy, guys, sorry about this. I would do a lot better in person. I was hoping to see you all tonight. Could we go to the next slide, please? In 2019, we saw a huge increase in services, a 42% increase actually, of our services to survivors of domestic violence. We provided over 1,000 nights of safety for families in need at our shelter. And the total new survivors was 384. And then we provided 1,657 total units of service, and that included individual contacts with active clients, which can be a combination of new survivors and historical people that we have been serving. We receive domestic violence incident reports from the police department, and that's one source of how we get our referrals. And case managers also provide advocacy support and education to victims in both criminal and family court. And that's pretty much the presentation. I am so sorry for all the problems and my being unable to be muted or unmuted or whatever. I did also send Sean a copy of our brochure, so everybody can hopefully have that sent. I can always distribute them too.
Millie, the case managers, they're not just YWCA employees, are they?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Millie, do you guys have any data, and maybe Linda, this could be a question for you too, as far as any increase year over year with COVID?
Yes, that's a really good question. The numbers have increased substantially with our hotline calls. When COVID hit, you can only imagine that the survivors are now trapped in their houses without any means of leaving since COVID. So the domestic violence has increased substantially. I don't think we're seeing the whole fallout from this yet as the pandemic continues. People are still trapped in their houses with their abusers. But we have done provided other services to the survivors, to their families during COVID. We've been providing outreach and helping with things where people are unemployed and their children aren't in school, and they're having food shortages. So we've been helping with food distribution and the backpack program. So we've been doing different things than normal, trying to reach people, trying to make sure that they get what they need, but not put them in any jeopardy or any harm by so it's taken a certain level of new creativity through the COVID virus.
Yeah, and I just wanted to I completely agree with Millie. The numbers for mental health, we saw the beginning of the pandemic dip, and our numbers significantly decreased around March and April, and then they started to spike and increase in April and May, and then kind of level out. Mental health services across the state with county-run clinics have increased significantly during this time, and our school referrals have also significantly increased. So our, especially with our staff offering 3 different methods, delivery of service, face-to-face, telephonic, and telehealth, we're trying to accommodate as best we can, but the numbers are pretty high. Great question.
Thank you both.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Fran. Speak up. You got to speak up, Fran.
Millie, on your parental violence, you talked about mainly the man being the violent one. I had a neighbor, the wife was the violent one. I mean, she was throwing things through the windows next door to her. And she was, do you also take care of that side? Or is it just for the women?
Domestic violence, can everybody still hear me?
Yes. Keep going, Millie. You're doing good.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I hope I didn't say that it was just men that were violent. We absolutely serve men. And we always want to make sure that people know that. Our statistics are higher with us serving women, but we do serve men as well. So I hope I didn't imply that only men are the abusers. That is not the case.
Linda or Millie, do you have any general percentage-wise of the number of cases in a typical year as far as the male versus female aggressor, so to speak?
I wish I had the statistics right in front of me, Jay, but I would say it's 75 or 80% women to 20 to 25% men.
Okay.
Yeah, the percentages are significantly higher for males being the perpetrator than females in regards to domestic violence situations, and as well as sexual assault.
Right.
But regarding, let's say, suicidal ideations or suicide attempts, women have more attempts at suicide than males do. Males have a higher rate of suicide as well. So it's, depending on what topic you're talking about, specific to, the domestic violence, men are more the perpetrator. But that's not to say that it does not happen with the female being the perpetrator as well.
Understood. Other questions of our two ladies here right now in the terms of the mental health and our particularly domestic violence activities?
I'd just like to just put in there that we have a really good working relationship with the police department in all the areas in Genesee County. Officer Coffey is our domestic violence liaison. And so when we have a situation where we just need, either help or advice or whatever, the police department all the police departments have been great in assisting us and in assisting our clients when needed. So there's a really good working relationship with the police department, but also with all the other community entities in Genesee County, including Genesee Justice and the mental health department. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and also that we're the sole provider of domestic violence services in Genesee County.
Gotcha. That's a good point, Millie. Yep.
And
Anything else?
I apologize for all the computer problems.
Okay, you got through it. We survived. What the heck?
Okay, got through it.
That's right. Just remember what you started 3 years ago, Millie. Come on now. This is a cakewalk.
This is a piece of cake. Thanks, Jay.
Anything else?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to move on, Chief Sean? To MPTC.
Ready when you are.
Go ahead, kiddo.
Okay, so what you see on your screen now is the webpage from the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services, and their blurb on what the MPTC is. So MPT stands for Municipal Police Training Council. So they give you a brief history here. As it says, the state of New York was the first in 1959 in the nation to establish a basic training for newly appointed police officers. And they created the MPTC to make this happen and set the course outline. The MPTC also has responsibility of making recommendations regarding police training schools, instructor qualifications, categories, classifications of in-service training, etc. I'm not going to read all of this, but as we get down towards the bottom, so the second to last paragraph, so when the mandate went into effect on July 1st, 1960, the basic course for police officers was 80 hours of instruction, 2 weeks. Currently, and this was updated in 2008, 639 hours was required. I just recently watched a webinar from the Municipal Police Training Council, one of their meetings, and it looks like in 2021, the basic course will be easily over 700 hours based upon new training standards. The MPTC, again, it sets out the number of hours and also the content of the basic course for police officers, as well as qualifications for instructors and the other in-service training items that many police officers see on a daily basis. Let's see if I can change my page here. Give me 1 second.
Chief, is the 700 hours over a cumulative time period basically per officer? Is that what that is?
So that basically begins.
Otherwise, that's a 30-year actual police year.
It is. So it takes about 4 to 5 months to get an officer through the police academy.
Okay.
From day one of entry to the day that they come out to field training, and then they have a whole nother training aspect in field training that's not included in the basic. It is included in the number of hours set out by the Basic Academy because there is a minimum standard of 160 hours that an officer must complete during their field training and supervision period. But it's all agencies go above and beyond that 160 hours. So our field training program is a minimum of 12 weeks. With a maximum of whatever it takes to get the person through it, as long as they're still progressing. The members of the council are made up from, they're all governor appointed members to the Municipal Police Training Council. It's an 8-member panel. And as the chair, Sheriff Ron Spikes from Yates County, as he mentioned on the webinar yesterday, it's they only have 5 members right now because the governor has not filled the other seats. So there are 2 seats that are allotted to the New York State Chiefs of Police Association. On the screen, you will see those listed at the bottom, Chief Tim Parisi and Chief Dave Zach. Chief Dave Zach is currently a police chief in North Carolina. So they have not replaced the
Wow.
New York State Chiefs representative. There is only 1 member on there from the New York State Sheriff's Association, which is Chairman Spike. There's supposed to be a second from the New York State Sheriff's Association. Superintendent George Beach, which I don't believe he's currently the superintendent of state police, but the new superintendent is supposed to be on the committee and he has not been assigned yet. And then there's a couple other individuals from different colleges, et cetera. So, and that list, as you can see, is of 2018. This is their website. This is their information on their website.
That's not good.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, at the beginning of our meetings, I do sit on the New York State Chiefs of Police Board of Governors. We have appointed a member to the Municipal Police Training Council. We are waiting for the governor to okay that appointment and seat him on the council. But they do a lot of work dealing with the different training aspects that all police officers in New York State have to go through under New York State Department of Correction or Department of Criminal Justice standards. So there is training that officers receive that are not DCJS certified, but they come from other organizations, outside entities, such as the implicit bias training that Julie Carasone will put on for the department. That's not a sanctioned or a scheduled DCJS certified school, but it is something that we're taking on. They've been very busy over the last couple of years because every time the legislation and laws change, it changes the way the basic academy looks, or it adds to the basic academy. It changes what in-service training looks like. They did revamp, I believe last year, their defensive tactics training to include new legislation that was out there. Once that happens, now all of the people that are certified as trainers across the state have to go through a refresher instructor training, so they can then put their individuals underneath them through a refresher and an updated training. So it does take quite some time. You can imagine with over 400 police agencies across the state, plus the sheriff's departments, plus the state police, the other municipal law enforcement agencies, or other law enforcement agencies that are out there. So it does take quite a bit of time to get all of that information updated and down to the rank and file, so to speak. Does anyone have any questions about the MPTC? Fran's raising his hand, but you're muted, Fran.
Okay, you said that you have, you go to 12 weeks, but according to this, that's 17.5 weeks of training. Why are we 5 weeks less training than what they require? And the other question is, where does this training take place? Do we go to the State Police Academy, or do we go, where do we train our police officers?
Yep, both good questions. So our 12 weeks exceeds the 160 hours that are mandated by the New York State Municipal Police Training Council. We usually do 16 weeks, which again exceeds that by four more weeks. Our training takes place at a variety of training locations. So we do not host a police academy. We don't run a police academy here. We have sent officers to various police academies in the region. First and foremost, we've used Niagara County. They run a law enforcement academy. We've had great success with the officers there. Monroe County, We've used their police academy for basic training. We use them for advanced training as well, as we have with Niagara, and Erie County as well. So Erie County runs a full-time police academy that we've used in the past, as well as some of their additional training offerings that they have. Batavia GCC does offer a part-time police academy. It's the academy that I attended when I put myself through the academy. So we do hire individuals that have gone through that academy. So no matter what academy you go to in New York State, you receive the exact same training, basic training. Each academy can add on their own individual items at the end of it. So for example, some academies will add radar certification. So an officer that comes out of a Niagara Academy may have a radar certification. Whereas if an officer attends Monroe, because it's usually a City of Rochester class, that's not something that they look for. So that's an additional training that we would have to put our officers through once they're done with the basic academy. Some of them offer a TASER certification. So all of our officers are TASER certified, which is another certification you have to get. Some of them offer that. And then some of them offer some more reality-based training than the basic academy mandates. So I will say that every academy that we've sent anyone to goes above and beyond the basic requirements that are set forth by MPTC.
Very good.
Thank you.
Other questions of the chief on this section?
Chief, was that syllabus that you passed out? I want to say it was in our second meeting. Is that the basic training syllabus that we're talking about?
I'd have to look at my notes. Probably. If it was out, it was an outline of individual classes, correct? Yes. Yep. That is the basic course table of contents from January of 2020. With the number of hours that are minimally required for each class and who can instruct it.
Other questions? All right, Chief, you want to move on to the New York State accreditation, please?
Yes, sir. Okay, so this is the New York State Criminal Justice Services page on New York State accreditation. The accreditation program is a progressive and contemporary way of helping police agencies evaluate and improve their overall performance. Provides formal recognition that an organization meets or exceeds general expectations of quality in the field. Accreditation acknowledges the implementation of policies that are conceptually sound and operationally effective. The state program began in 1989 and encompasses 4 principal goals: to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of law enforcement agencies utilizing existing personnel, equipment, and facilities to the extent possible; to promote increased cooperation and coordination among law enforcement agencies and other agencies of the criminal justice services; to ensure the appropriate training of law enforcement personnel; and to promote public confidence in law enforcement agencies. This is what we call the gold standard in law enforcement. So New York State has its own accreditation, as Frank Riccobono can speak to. They've gone through that process at the sheriff's office. They're an accredited agency. City of Batavia never was. And again, we're working towards that goal. These standards are updated regularly, along with all of the training the training standards in New York State. And I can pull up this book here real quick. This is version 8.4, and I believe, okay, so this is the most recent version that was revised September 3rd, 2020. Can go through this just very briefly. I don't want to go through the whole thing. There are 133 standards now, I believe. And basically, to put this in a nutshell, what accreditation does is it looks at your organization on an operational level to make sure that you are doing the best practices when it comes to your performance and what you deliver to the public. As I had mentioned when we started going through some of the policies, our policy manual meets the New York State accreditation standard already. It is a matter of, in order to become accredited, you have to go through a process where all of your records are reviewed by an assessor, a New York State assessor. And it is quite a lengthy process. We're finally able at this point in time to have assigned someone to this task in our department. So we have a police officer that is our accreditation manager. He started a few weeks ago. He's doing a fantastic job. Again, a lot of the work is done with the policies, but now we have to show that we're meeting the standard. We have a very great resource across the street. One of the sheriff's deputies that does the accreditation for the sheriff's office. And I'm not sure, Frank, does Deb do the accreditation for the PSAP as well? Oh, you froze, Frank. Either way, she's also.
I'm sorry, I lost you.
I was just wondering if Deb also did the accreditation assessment for the PSAP.
No, she originally did a lot of the work, but as you mentioned, just the sheer volume of time that goes into it, we separated the duties. So I now have a senior dispatcher that basically takes charge of it. And the main thing to take from it is it's not that you get it done once. It's a continual process that you have to keep up on, or otherwise all that time and energy that you put into it is useless.
Yep. So as Frank mentioned, it's not one and done. So you have an initial assessment or an initial accreditation period. You have to apply to the New York State Law Enforcement Accreditation Agency to ask to be accredited. Then they give you a welcome packet and tell you you got all this work to do. So when I initially took this job, that was one of my goals, was to get the agency accredited back in 2012, 2013. I had a pretty lofty goal. I thought I'd be able to do it in a year. Here we are 8 years later and I still don't have it done. And the reason why is because it takes a lot of time. As I said, we had to take an officer off the road and assign him to do this. And this is his 40-hour-a-week job. Again, as I had mentioned, we have a great working relationship with the sheriff's office, and they've been kind enough to let us bother their manager for the patrol side of things. And she's been a great resource. Not only is she the accreditation manager for the sheriff's office, she's also an assessor for the state. So she's one of the people that goes out to the different law enforcement agencies and looks at their files and interviews their folks to make sure that they're doing everything they need to do. This book, again, is about 172 pages long or so. So I'll just get down to one of the standards so you guys can see this real quick. Oh, that's the other thing. It's broken into critical standards, administrative standards, training standards, and operational standards, and there are some critical ones. And I see Jerry has a question.
Yeah, Sean, I don't remember how many civilians you have working, but is it possible to have a civilian do the accreditation work rather than taking somebody off the road?
It would be possible if the civilians weren't just as busy as everybody else. That's what we run into, is we just run into issues where I tried to do this ad hoc on my spare time. Wasn't able to do it because you lose track of where you are. Civilians, we only have 3 civilians that work. 2 are full-time, 1's part-time. And they're busy with their regular duties and their regular jobs. So, it was a real emphasis of me to get through this program. And we're in a position with staffing right now where we're able to allow that to happen with a police officer. And a police officer, quite honestly, knows more of the in and outs of the policies than a civilian would.
Understood.
And Sean, it's been an ongoing, and you are still making progress and going forward, that it's not stuck in limbo and it's not out parked in neutral somewhere.
That's correct. So this is just an example of one of the standards. So this is a pretty simple one, that the agency has a written mission statement and defines its roles. And then it shows you how you can make sure that you gain compliance with this, or show the assessors that you're complying with this. And actually, this is one of the first things that our officer noticed, that, we don't have this posted in our building somewhere. So you have to kind of look through these things. And again, he has to look at each individual standard and see what the verification strategies would be, and then make sure that we're going to be compliant with that. He's been doing having a lot of conversations with the person over at the sheriff's department to get us through this process. So it's a time-consuming one. We hope that we're hopeful that we'll be able to get through the actual file building piece of it fairly quickly, and then be able to move on for a mock assessment. And again, having the resource that we have and the individuals that we've made connections with, to be able to do maybe a pre-mock assessment. And then when they come out to do that mock assessment, and then you can ask for a formal assessment. And as Frank had alluded to, once you receive an accreditation certificate, in 5 years, you have to do it again. So this is a constant upkeep and maintenance issue for us. Now, it doesn't mean I got to take a police officer off the street for 40 hours, but I will have to take somebody off the street during that period when they're going to do a reassessment to make sure that everything is in order.
Other questions of the chief on this section? All right, Dr. Fix, number 8.
Okay, so with that last bit, we've actually completed a review of the 14 topics in the executive order that the governor provided for us. So the next steps are really just to kind of go forward and start figuring out, writing this plan, which would be, I believe Rachel's going to discuss with us at the next meeting. So we wanted to kind of go through each one of these topics with a little bit more detail, and kind of get a little sense of where everybody stands as far as their comfort level with the topics going forward. So we'll kind of do a little bit of a traffic stop type thing. I'm going to go through each topic, and all I want is basically green light means everybody's good. Let's proceed. Yellow light will be a situation where maybe we have a one-off or a couple people who just require some more information that we can potentially get them, between now and the next meeting. And then a red light is something that as a group, we feel like, hey, we really got to go back and readdress this topic and see where we stand with that. So if everybody has an understanding of kind of what it is we're looking to do, I'll just go down through each one of these topics, give you a little bit more of a review of what it was, refresh our memories. And if there's something that you feel we need.
1 second, Eric. I think Rachel wants to jump in.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. And I just wanted to introduce, at the last meeting, Nate Varland had asked, who's writing the plan? And I said, well, I'm writing the plan, but I really meant to say that our entire group is. And on that account, typically myself and the police chief, and if we had an assistant manager, would work to write this plan. But we've brought in an expert who's on the Zoom call with us tonight, Earl Wells from E3 Communication. He's worked in Genesee County with multiple agencies, including Genesee County, the Economic Development Center. And he has a staff in Buffalo, and he himself will be helping us to put to paper all the conversations we've had to date and get this plan in some kind of draft format for the group to consider and continue to refine. So I want to make it very clear that the group is in charge of writing the plan, and that their input and that what Eric's going to take us through is right now to see where you're at on each of these issues and whether we need to go back and have a longer discussion on them, if there needs to be discussion of changes. And again, we have to do it all within the context of our policies and accreditation and what the law allows for, New York state law and federal law. So I'll just remind everyone of that. But there certainly have been things that were brought up that we can write into the plan. So just wanted to introduce Earl. He's on the call tonight and he'll be joining us moving forward. And he will be helping us as a member of the team to put pen to paper and start writing of the plan. Secondly, the schedule coming up. Our next meeting is December 10th. We are going to take the items tonight that we may not have full comfort level with and try to discuss those more in depth, like Eric said. And between December 10th and into Christmas to January 7th, the goal of the city and with the help of E3 Communications is to put everything on paper and come up with a comprehensive plan to then get back to this group in advance of that meeting on January 7th. I think our calendar ran out on the December 10th meeting, but we will be coming back together January 7th. In between that and January 25th, continued conversations. If we need another meeting, we'll have one. And we'd like to put the draft plan to council on January 25th. So again, I'll reiterate, it's a draft plan. We're going to give this plan a month to be out in the public with residents, with community members, with all of our stakeholders, continuing to offer input and look for final approval of the plan, I believe, on March 8th. So before you got started, Eric, I just wanted to put all that into context of what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go and when we can start expecting the group members to see the first draft of this plan. And by no means will the first draft be the final plan. Thank you.
Yeah, think of Earl as being our kings and queens English, sort of overseer, but also making sure that if it's understandable to an outsider, that then everybody else, both the stakeholders and the community at large, will have a better understanding of what we've gone through and where we still may need to go going into the future.
Thanks, Jay. I've been called a lot of things. That's a first. So I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Very cool. Thanks, Eric. Earl, I'm sorry. Don't mind me. All right, Mr.
Earl,
Fix, you're back on.
Earl's responsible for all the whereases. So basically, if we were together in council chambers, I'd be handing out little sticky notes with different colors and just asking you to go up to each one of these topics and tell us where you feel and go from there. Void of that, I guess the easiest thing to do is just to go down each one of these. If somebody does have a question or is in search of more information, unmute yourselves and just give us a wave or say, hey, I got a question, and we'll take note of that and see what we can do about getting that information for the next meeting. By all means, we're going off of my notes for this. So Sean, feel free to jump in anytime as we're talking about these topics, and we'll go from there. So we'll start out right at the top with the use of force policy. That was policy 300. We spent quite a bit of time on that, particularly in I believe it was our second meeting, reviewing that policy basically page by page and going down through. So
Jerry's got his hand up.
Jerry's got his hand up. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, the hand was raised before we got to your first line there, use of force. But I was just curious, since there's really no guidelines as to what a plan consists of, does anyone have any idea as to what exactly we're proposing? Is it certain changes to certain things? Anybody have any thoughts as to what the plan is supposed to say?
Jerry, is that question for the group or
Yes,
for
yes. Yeah.
city?
Oh, anyone. Anyone. I know that there's no guidelines from the executive order, but does anyone have any thoughts as to, it just says proposed plan. What does anyone have any thoughts as to what the plan's supposed to say?
Yeah,
Well-
Jerry, this is George Van Est.
Yep.
I stayed in on a webinar last week with representatives of the governor's office and NICOM. And what the governor's representatives indicated is there's no specific requirements for each municipality. It's really up to each municipality to do the review process, assess the qualifications or categories that are laid out in the executive order, and then determine on behalf of that municipality what they feel are appropriate proposals for the community. So it's really up to us after reviewing this checklist to go through and determine where the group feels the plan should go and what areas it should discuss or address.
Yeah, well, again, and it sounds something like the governor would say, which is sort of ambiguous, as to what's the plan supposed to propose. I know everyone's supposed to come up with their own plan, but is it a plan to say everything's fine? Is it a plan to say, I think use of force needs to get changed, or any idea?
Well, to that end, there were a number of studies that NICOM looked at to determine where the police agencies in New York State stood. And what NICOM determined from a survey they ran was that a lot of the municipal police forces already have a lot of these policies in place and have been updating it. So it's really going to depend on each municipal police force as to where they stand relative to New York State policies, New York State accreditation standards, and things of that sort. If, for example, the police department did not have up-to-date standards and policies, and I think that's probably a different discussion. To the extent the policies are current, are updated by Lexipol, and are consistent with New York State law, I think that's going to be the starting point to make sure those things are in place, and then determine if there's areas that the group feels need to be discussed, spruced up, considered, things of that sort. But in terms of going through and rewriting policies, I don't think from my research on it, and certainly from sitting in on a webinar with representatives from Albany, that that's the case where you'd rewrite any of these policies in total.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it says in the law itself, literally, or in the outline that the governor put out, tailored to the specific needs of the community and the general promotion of improved police agency and community relationships based on trust and fairness, accountability and transparency, and which seek to reduce any racial disparities in policing. That's kind of the core of what we are part of the assessment of that situation in our community.
Right, and on that point, I think that it's not just to find whether or not the police are meeting the minimum standards for accreditation, because that would be easy.
I think a lot of it is, if I can just,
go right ahead.
I'm new to the group. I think a lot of it is just demonstrating that the process, that there's been engagement, that you're doing these type of meetings, that you're reaching out to the community, you're doing things like a survey. And if you look at the governors, and again, having been around politics a long time, and I think we all know the personality of the governor. So that's one thing he's looking for when you read his executive order. And I also think it's a matter of, he asks specific questions in that order. I think it's a matter of answering his questions. So I don't think this gets into, we're going to change this practice or this process or this policy. It's more, hey, this is what we did. This is how we engaged the community. These are the processes we put in place. And here are the answers to the questions that were proposed in the executive order. That's my mindset as far as, and these can all be addendums and attachments and appendixes, because my question was, looking at this document, this is not our table of contents, I wouldn't think, for the report. This is almost more here. And by the way, here are appendices to, policies and procedures with the Batavia City Police Department. So I don't envision this being, a tome, to the degree that we can demonstrate, again, transparency, engagement, outreach. I think those are the important things that they're really looking for at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Those last couple words are all the engagement and the stakeholders, and the fact that the circulation in the community was as broad as we feel or think we can, basically push it out there and at least engender the option for people to respond and provide feedback, and that it's not a cookie cutter approach, and it's involved all these things that we've been reviewing, and that, you know, our law enforcement agency, and others in the community, because the county's going through the same process at this point, are doing as much push out and outreach. And that's why our room in the city is, what is it, 23 to 24 stakeholders right out of the gate, you know, is part of, you know, what you see every week when we are physically, you know, together, and now a little bit less with Zoom. But again, that's just based on the problems with technology.
Well, and I can point to a few things that have come up. There have been questions about increased reporting on the BPD's website. That may be something we look at as, you know, if we're going to provide the report to, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, DCJS, why don't we put a link to DCJS on our website? You know, like, so that was one. There has been self-admittedly the community liaison position, and getting groups back together in PD to have more, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong here, have more community interaction, more focused on it, more targeted approach. I think that was one. The survey was also something, I believe, that came out of our conversations that we wanted to do. And I think that'll help form even more of our report as we go forward, or our response to it. So I'm just bringing up some of the thoughts, and the other things, some of them are out of our control, and that's the hiring, and how civil service requires the testing to be done in certain scores. So there was things we talked about very early on that we identified as what might be impediments to persons in our community that wanted to involve themselves in law enforcement but could not because of their test scores. So I find those as kind of the big things I've heard this group saying that we want to keep at the forefront as we write this plan, that seem achievable. And that I think is the goal, is we have to make sure what we're recommending is achievable for all involved with the resources that we currently have.
Yeah, that's my recollection of some of the bigger items that came out. But, you know, I think Eric wanted to take us through the exercise of walking down through that to make sure that there wasn't any other lingering.
You know, and to the fact also that, you know, there is not one sole, you know, group, you know, or set of individuals who are orchestrating all this. This is a very open and fluid process. And that's what this community, and I think most of the stakeholders, or all the stakeholders, have identified as their interest, because that's a lot of the questions that we've heard from people. And it's ongoing, and this will become sort of a very fluid template and part of the marching orders for the City of Batavia Police Department going forward. Other comments on this area before we go right back to Mr. Eric again?
I think to just add to what Rachel mentioned, some other ideas that I guess I've been thinking about are just training issues, training practices, partnering with Genesee County Mental Health to do reality-based training would be an important change that would be realistic for us to do and implement. So that is just another thing I was thinking about, at least from a training perspective.
Good point, Matt.
I can just add one thing, just an observation. So initially we had some more diversity in our group, and that attendance has fallen off. I'm not sure why, I'm not going to speculate, but I think we need to be real intentional about that narrative in the final report or in whatever gets done. You know, I'm still new to the community, so I'm not going to assume anything, but I can tell you pretty quick read of things. And I know the governor's intention was real explicit around racial relationships in every community across New York State. I want to be an advocate for those people who sometimes seem to not be present when they need to be present, or may feel uncomfortable to stay engaged in committees and advisory groups. And so I just want to make sure that we don't lose the sight of the initial conversation in our first meeting, that there is some underlying racial tensions that are there that may not necessarily be explicit, may not be a real common issue in the community of Batavia. But I would just say, it's not Rochester, it's not a larger, more urban environment, but I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. I think it's important. I think it came up in some conversations and questions from some of our fellow advisory members around racial bias training, implicit bias training. I'm not sure how we do it. I just don't want to lose sight of that. I think it needs to be an intentional effort in whatever you put together that recognizes that there will be a dynamic differences between some of the officers' cultural backgrounds and some of the people that they're serving. And how do you try to mitigate and continue to train and continue to inform and continue to build those relationships? So I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in Earl's work or in our work as a collective group.
Yeah.
So that's all. I just need to say that on behalf of the 25% of kids of color I represent here in the Batavia City School Districts and their parents.
Thanks, Honorable. Rach and Sean, you guys can keep reaching out to the other stakeholders who we haven't seen in a couple of weeks here, just to make sure they still want to be engaged, or if there's been some kind of a hindrance in one way, shape, or form, so that again, they don't just fall off to the side.
Yeah, I did get messages from 2 individuals that said they could not make it tonight. Mr. Blackshear and Mr. Armstrong.
Okay.
However, I didn't hear from everybody either. So yeah, definitely keep reaching out to individuals and
Can I jump in there?
Go ahead, Marty.
I agree with Annabelle that it would be easy just to say, well, we did this and they didn't show up. But I think that, Chief, maybe it would speak volumes, for you to drive over. Even I see you out walking every day. I want to applaud you for that as well. Just take a loop down around where Brandon has opened his new barber shop and maybe stick your head in there. I just think that speaks volumes, because the reality of it is, I just think that would be a great gesture. Any one of us could do it, but if it comes from you, it just means so much. And I think that should be, as well as we go forward, that if you are able to do that, that it is documented that you did that. And I just think it's part of what we're about right now.
Good point, Marty. Anything else on this before we go right back to Mr. Eric Fix, please? Okay, Eric.
All right, so we're also kind of running out of time here. So great comments. Thanks for the questions. As we go down through this again, if there's something you want to just stop, just unmute yourself, jump in, and we'll go from there. But we've been reviewing these, a little bit over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully, if there were questions coming in, we've heard them. So obviously, use of force. We talked about that in our second meeting. Spent most of the meeting on that. Reviewed the policy 300 and what we're currently doing. Procedural justice, there were 3 policies in regards to that. Policy 319 for standards of conduct, policy 339 for community relations, and policy 401 with bias-based policing, where we also discussed some training and some things like that. Studies addressing systemic racial bias and racial justice in policing. Again, that piece, we really had struggled to really find anything concrete to present to you folks, and Rachel sent us over a link to a study that was done by Cornell University, which was like 70 some odd pages, Rachel. I think I got through the first 7 or 8 and then just kind of glanced through the rest. Model policies and guidelines, implicit bias awareness training, which we mentioned has been rescheduled due to COVID, and hopefully that's going to take place. And honestly, kudos to the department just for including that. I know a lot of businesses and things like that are revamping those policies. And it's great that we're doing that. De-escalation training, which is completed annually by the Batavia Police Department. We talked about the training and the policies and how that goes. And I think, Matt talked a little bit about how that's something we could definitely look into going forward is what other types of trainings we can offer. law enforcement assisted diversion programs. So that was, we talked about the PINS program and some of the things that we have for our juveniles, as well as the opioid task force, law enforcement committee that is part of a tri-county committee, and PARI, Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative. So we discussed those. You probably remember our presentation with Genesee Justice in regards to restorative justice policies and practices and what they're doing over there. With that organization, I know I'm going fast. Anybody want me to stop on anything yet? All right, great. We heard from the YW and mental health today in regards to the outreach and conflict resolution, as well as that kind of ties into violence prevention and reduction interventions. Had the presentation about the call center last meeting and how that functions as well. And then we heard about problem oriented policing. So that's the crime task force, hotspot policing. That's our net officer program and what they're doing with that. And that fell as well into focused deterrence and zone patrols and some items such as that. And then finally, at the end of last meeting, we talked about crime prevention through environmental design. And Rachel mentioned that's things like lighting and beautification projects, as well as some other initiatives that take place that, you know, give people the sense of security and welfare in their communities, as well as some of the programs that we have for specific areas in town. We mentioned quite a few times the Summit Street group that gets together and does that sort of thing. And then tonight was more on violence prevention and reduction, model policies in regards to MPTC, and then of course accreditation. So kind of roll through that quickly. Anybody feel like there's something on here that we need more information on, or you feel maybe we missed the boat on something and want to go back at our next meeting and be sure we address?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jared. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think that, and I'm probably going to be outvoted, but I would like to review the use of force policy, and specifically as it relates to intervention, de-escalation. I was at another reform committee meeting recently, and I was told that there's going to be some de-escalation policies coming out of the guidelines coming from the state. I'd like to see us review the use of force policy to see if whether or not we can modify it to include additional information such as de-escalation, change the language and look at the language in the intervention requirements for excessive force, and also as the use of force policy relates to the body camera video policy. I'd like those issues to be reviewed again by the committee before we come up with a draft plan, because I think there's some modifications of those policies that at least I'd like to propose.
Jerry, is there something specific that you know is or heard, we're told is coming out as far as the de-escalation New York State policies and intervention?
Well, Chief Hayward told our group on Tuesday that he said that before the end of the year that the governor's office was supposed to come out with de-escalation policy guidelines and training. And I don't know the specifics. He didn't have the specifics, but he said we would review that in addition to the use of force policy when he got those guidelines and the trainings from the state. That's all I know.
I'm going to presume Chris and Matt and Chris Camp, you guys, and Sean, you guys are in privy to that kind of stuff also?
Yeah, I would just mention that, you know, our current use of force policy already has de-escalation baked into it, as well as a duty to intercede. Any de-escalation or any further policies or model programs that the governor's office will put out later this year, next year, whenever that may be, that is what we pay Lexipol to do, is to make sure that our policy is updated to meet that standard. So if there's something in the future that we're not aware of, we obviously can't put it in there now.
Oh, well, I understand that, but I want something, I would suggest something to the policy that's better than Lexipol. We don't have to follow Lexipol. I mean, they have their policy and what they think is good. But that doesn't mean that it can't be modified. And there's definitely some problems with, in my opinion, the language that Lexapro puts out as what they consider best policy for the police department. So yeah, I think the policy modification, there's some modifications to the policy that I would recommend that would be better than what Lexapro is providing out to a lot of the police departments, a higher standard.
It's not Lexapol's policy. It's Lexapol's service, which analyzes New York state law, state statute, and constitutional law and updates that accordingly.
Well,
So-
I respectfully disagree, George. I'm not saying it's their policy. It's the policy that they promote as what they say is the
Or New York
highest
state law.
standards. Well, no, it's not per New York state law. All right. The policy meets the minimum standards. Okay. It's not the best standards.
Best
And
standards.
so-
for what?
The best standards for protecting the community.
So Jerry,
That's the whole idea behind this group, is to come up with policies that not are necessarily what are certified policies or the policies put out by Lexapro or the policies that other police departments use. It's to see whether or not those policies can be made better.
Based
All
on
right?
New York state law, this is the best policy, Jerry.
That's not true, George. It's
Guys,
not.
guys,
That's what you're saying.
Guys,
all right,
guys,
that's,
let's
this
not
is
have
a,
this
The
conversation
New York
off-
State
off-
Constitution, the federal constitution, and the accreditation model says is the case.
Obviously, George.
I'm going to suggest we take this offline and you guys can have this conversation. And,
Yeah.
and Jerry, if there is something that you feel is available to us that we can look at next time, and you can provide that to, Sean, and he can disseminate it, we'll gladly do that.
That's fine.
Anything else in regards to the policies? All right.
Okay, we're gonna do this again on December the 12th, 6 to 8 PM. Most likely Zoom, we think.
I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry, Jay. I
Go
don't
ahead,
mean to
December
interrupt.
10th.
10th, right? You said the
December 10th,
12th.
yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure.
I was using the Gregorian calendar from 100 years ago. Don't mind me, Raylene.
He was looking
You're
at the
good.
calendar on his.
Don't worry about it.
He's looking at the calendar on his 40-year-old refrigerator behind him.
No, it's the one that DiNapoli sent me now that I'm getting my DiNapoli bucks every month.
Oh
Yeah.
my.
Stop working upon retirement, right?
So are we all good for this evening, sports fans?
I have
Yes,
one
we're
comment.
good.
Go ahead, Marty.
Matt Watazik needs to change his calendar. It's still in October.
Thanks for pointing that out in front of everyone, Marty.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you
We're all
all.
good? All right, everybody, be
Care.
well and be safe.
Be
Have a
safe.
good and safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you all. Great job, Eric. Great job tonight. Jay, great job. Sean, great job.
Thanks,
Well,
guys.
be safe, everyone. Hey, Matt. Hey, Nate Varlin.
Nice evening.
All right, have a nice Thanksgiving.
Hey there. You too, Mr. Fran.